Dustin Abbott, and I am here today to finally do the unboxing and the first look at the new Tamron 85mm. This is from their new SP Prime series of lenses, and it is the 85mm f1.8 VC USD lens. And so this becomes the first full-frame compatible 85mm lens to have any kind of image stabilization associated with it. And I've been really looking forward to getting my hands on this lens for some time now. So I apologize to those of you that have been just as eagerly awaiting my findings on this lens. And unfortunately, there has been a supply issue here in Canada, and so Tamron Canada was unable to get me one. And so Tamron USA stepped up to the plate, and they sent me one now over 3 weeks ago. But unfortunately, the Postal Service had its own way, and it was stuck in customs for the last 3 weeks. And so boo to USPS and Canada Post for bungling that. But finally, I have it in hand today, and so we're going to jump in and take a look inside the box. And so, unsurprisingly, inside you have the basics. You have a lens hood, and fortunately, Tamron does include lens hoods with all of their products. Hello, Canon. But unfortunately, unlike Sigma, they do not include any kind of carrying case or padded case for their lenses. And so here, finally, after a long wait, I have it in hand. And so, as expected, I'm going to pull the tape off of the distance window, and so that we can have it in all of its unfettered glory. So here, as we look side by side, I have the 45mm that I actually, after reviewing it, I purchased a copy for myself. Really like the lens in a lot of ways. And so as you can see, as far as the physical dimensions go, the 85mm is almost, it's within just a millimeter or so of the overall length. And so it's very close in length. So still a reasonably compact lens. However, the primary difference is that the 85mm is a little bit more around in terms of its circumference, and as a result of that extra density and size, it weighs in at a little bit heftier 700 grams, which is still not a heavy lens. Holding it in hand, it feels dense, but it doesn't feel overly hefty either. And so by comparison, the 45mm, it also feels, you know, they're very well constructed lenses, but it's certainly a little bit lighter feeling. I've actually liked the form factor of the 45mm quite a bit. It's not as compact as, say, my Canon 35mm f2.IS, but it's compact enough that it fits easily in bags. It's not hard to bring along, and it hasn't kind of crossed that threshold to where it becomes onerous to pack along. Now, there are a few other different design differences here. Overall, because of the more thickness of the girth here, unlike the 45mm, there's a difference in what the front element looks like. They do share, thankfully, a 67mm front filter thread, and so very common and now shared across all three of the 35, 45, and then 85mm prime lenses. So that's certainly welcome, but the actual width of the barrel before you get to the mount is wider, and so it actually comes in to where the filter thread is. Also, there is a difference in the design of the actual lens hood. The 45mm has a pedal-shaped, and the 35mm is the same. Pedal-shaped lens hood that's a little bit more compact. And so this is non-pedal, it's flat, and a little bit more robust to allow a little more shading of the front element. And so as you can see, when the lens hoods are attached, the overall physical dimensions look less similar overall. Now, much like the 45mm, this new design is it's a beautiful design. It's very clean, very functional. The focus ring on these lenses is really nice. Some of the nicest amongst any autofocusing lenses. And so when I handle this for the first time, it feels similar, but I will note that the focus throw is much smaller. Part of that is because unlike the 35mm and the 45mm, this 85mm does not have an exceptionally close minimum focus distance, and thus not an exceptionally high maximum magnification. The 35 millimeter had a 0.40 magnification, which is huge. This 45 millimeter has a 0.29 magnification, which is also fantastic. By contrast, the 85 millimeter has only a 0.14 times maximum magnification, which is much lower and sounds very disappointing, but when you understand the nature of 85 millimeters, that's actually the highest figure in the class. And the typical class ranges from 0.11 times to 0.13 times. And so this is, very slightly at the top of the class when it comes to that. But don't plan on this doubling as a pseudo macro lens like the 35 or 45 millimeter lenses do. Overall, it has a very similar design language in the kind of matte, not quite matte, but more like a satin finish on the barrel itself, a nice focus ring here. And then it goes down to, Tamron calls this luminous gold, but whatever you want to call it, the kind of platinum colored accent ring right along the base that sets it apart. I will note that the Tamron caps, both the front cap and now the rear cap, are the nicest in the biz from what I can tell. They have a nice kind of premium feel even in the pinch action that is better than any other caps I'm using. And now the rear cap has a nice flare and a double-edged wall that has a very functional purpose. These caps are actually designed to where they fit right over the rubber gasket that is part of the weather sealing on these SP bodies, and it provides some protection for that. And so that's certainly a welcome plus right there. Now, as far as the switches go, like the other, there is simply an AF, MF, so turning manual focus or autofocus on and off, and then an on and off for the image stabilizer. And I'm looking forward to testing that out. Now, there is one other area that I will note that is distinct between these two. My 45 millimeter and the 35 millimeter that I tested, it had a nice big designed in Japan logo here. And then also it has a more faint where it says made in Japan. Likewise, the lens hood says made in Japan. This 85 millimeter has the designed in Japan logo, but if you look more closely, it says that it's made in China and the lens hood is made in the Philippines. Now, the truth of the matter is that I've discovered that most all lens manufacturers are outsourcing a fair amount of their manufacturing right now. And that's even more true since Japan has been hit with some major natural disasters in recent years. And so I see that very often now in Canon gear as well. And some of in the past, the Tamron kind of more consumer grade products. And so I was happy to see that this lens and the 35 millimeter and also the recent 90 millimeter f2.8 VC macro from the SP series, kind of the rebuild of that, all of those were made in Japan. So I'm not thrilled to see that the manufacturing is outsourced on this, but so long as they keep up the great quality control, I think that's very important. Lens Rentals, when they broke down a number of copies of the 45 millimeter, they found that there was very, very little sample variation. And so that spoke to a highly demanding manufacturing process that I appreciate. So I'm hoping that the 85 millimeter, despite outsourcing some of the manufacturing, is going to keep up that standard of excellence. So now I have this mounted on a 6D body, and as you can see, it's a nice fit here. It's a good size lens, but it's not overwhelming in any way as far as the balance goes. The balance, a lot of the weight is close enough to the camera itself where it doesn't feel top heavy, and so I don't think this is going to be an onerous lens to carry. Although the weight of 700 grams plus your camera body, depending on what body you're using, you're definitely going to note that it's there, though not to the level of some of the other recent primes that I have reviewed that have been up in the 900 plus gram range. And so I'm in a fairly dark room here because of studio oriented, but overall I can tell that the autofocus is going to be snappier than that of the 45 millimeter. That's the trade-off of having a shorter focus throw, which I see here. It's not as extreme as what it was on the 35 or 45 millimeters. And I think that's probably the right choice here. Tamron needs this lens because of the way that an 85 millimeter lens is used. They need that to have some faster autofocus. The early chart results from this lens show that it resolves very, very highly. So I'm interested in seeing that, but I'm even more interested in seeing if it's able to have great resolution while also maintaining an artistic rendering, which I think is very important in a portrait-specific lens. Sharpness is great, but even more important is the overall look of the images that either are going to be very pleasing or tends towards being more clinical. And we'll see if Tamron has managed to strike gold in finding a balance between those two things. I'm Dustin Abbott. If you haven't already, please subscribe, sign up for my newsletter down below, visit my website, and that way you can stay abreast of all the developments of this review along with a number of others that are on the go right now. Thanks for watching today. Have a great day.